Well, it's another Sunday night. It's the 6th of March. And I thought it was time to record another episode of the Malt Travel podcast. We're up to number 31 this week. So I'm going to catch up with the gents. And again, as I put in the Twitter feed, it's a bit of a look around the northeast again. So Nick and I, we met him before, spent New Year in Northumberland. So mainly based in Amble. So we're going to talk a little bit of Amble. And then Bruce again has been on his regular trip to the Toon. And again, I think pops a few new places, your places. So we'll catch that as well. So I'll move the music on. Good evening, gentlemen. How are we all? As you can tell, my voice has been swallowed by a frog. So I'm still blaming a very wet outing in Whitby, where we ended up drip drying in the Whitby brewery a couple of weekends ago. I'm sure I got allergy then. So I'm
not used to northern weather, are you? You're not used to northern weather.
I've just had 2 days up in the Lake District, which is very nice, although it was $5.50 a pint. But I've got to say, the Hawkshead Gull was on very good form at the Lakeside Hotel. I tried the bitter, but I wasn't enamored with the bitter. So, but
that's if you can find somebody to serve you.
Yeah, no, they were doing all right actually. I think they're really focused on weddings and lots of British, tourists, and it was steady really. The boats weren't running, the train wasn't running yet, but it was all right. So, Nicholas, Bruce, how are we?
Fine.
All right. Yeah.
I suppose we should acknowledge what's going on in the world, really. Everybody enthralled to an idiot madman who's attempting to impose a bill on everybody and cause untold misery. But that's enough about the bloke who runs Brewdog. What else is going on?
yeah. It's a bit scary. We were sat having a beer yesterday in one of the bars, and we got talking, and we all staying the same. You just can't imagine it, can you? Well, I think a lot of people have been watching that on Friday when there's a lot of families and the fathers are putting their kids on the train and wife on the train. They were staying to fight, and they've been given a gun and some bullets, and that was it. So these bloody Russian tanks coming towards them. So
quite unbelievable, really, isn't it?
Bad, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, you have to feel for them and feel the world's going to be a very different place, I think, for a long time to come, isn't it?
Yeah. So no more Russian beer. We might try and I know Bruce will be trying to find some Ukrainian beer. But like you say, it tells everybody's buying it up as kind of an act of solidarity. Yeah. So, Nicholas, how are you?
All right. Yeah. I was shopping for beer, but I went in on bargains and got a big can of Astrid.
All right, Thornbridge, yeah.
Juicy pale, £1.69. Didn't think that was a bad price. Didn't have many left on shelf, but
I can nearly snap because I just had a quick look in my garage, and I've got my Thornbridge. Now, I'm on them. I'm not had this one. This is a McConnell's Creamy Vanilla Stout. It's only a 5%, so it's quite tame for them. And Bruce, I was hearing today actually on the Opinions podcast that I didn't know this. Brew York have now got something. It's called Big Toucan, which is their take on Guinness. They were so peed off with people going into Brew York tap and saying, "Have you got Guinness?" So apparently they've actually made, I think it's a 4.8%, and it's labelled as nothing in it. It's a straight up stout. We haven't fucked about with it. There's no tonka beans in it or bloody lactose. It's just and probably it's their take on. They call it, surprisingly not a bit cheeky. They've called it Big Toucan.
I've got to try that. That'd be interesting to see what it's like, won't it?
Yeah.
Like
so see what it's like, really.
Do their interpretation without making it too wild. That'd be it.
Yeah. So I presume I guess this Thornbridge one's a bit like that as well, because it's about 5.2, so it's quite tame. Their box is late this month for some reason. I know they've been quite busy. But it's I got a note saying it's being dispatched, but it's on its way. And because one thing we've got to decide, guys, they've got their Peakender Festival back on now, and I know in fact they've just announced this week that that new Lakeside brewery, the one we mentioned that were the ex-Hawkshead guys, they're going to be one of the key brewers, focus the Peakender. So I think that is something.
It's been Beer Week in Sheffield this coming weekend.
Yeah, it's Beer Week in Sheffield. We've also got Malton Beer Town's been announced as well. That's coming up in the not so far distant future. Does that say April? I think it was.
I've got some more news about Malton as well. So
right, I'm trying to persuade Nick and Bruce because the Beer Town in Malton are offering a £50 ticket for unlimited samples. So
only lasts one day though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it starts on Friday to Saturday, I think.
But the ticket, £50 tickets only valid one day.
Oh, I would imagine so. Yeah.
Which,
Is that encouraging irresponsible drinking?
Yeah, no, I would have thought so. To get me money's worth, then I'd be taking it home in an ambulance. Yeah.
So we'll see how that is then. So so the policy that is we're going to have a look around. Well, I've called it a beery ramble around Amble because Nick and I we spent New Year up in Northumberland. But again, I've tapped on as well. I know Bruce, but you were up in Newcastle. I think half term, weren't you, with the family?
Well, it was a week last Friday. It was, yes, it was jolly good fun. Lovely day.
Send us a few nice pictures. I know you visited a couple of places that were new actually that we mentioned in previous podcasts. So quick beery highlights. So Colin, Bruce, so you've been back to we talked about Centurion back in episode 29.
We did. And last I said, rather bizarre, we've by the Centurion loads of times, but me and Ben popped in after we've been to see Toon play a few weeks ago, and it was rammed with people. And where that big mural is on the wall there, that big painting, that was actually in the time, it was covered by a pull-down TV screen. Now I can actually see a projector above it. This is what's baffled me, because it's kind of, it must have been a freestanding one. But of course, we went on the train and went in with Christy wanted a coffee, and fantastic atmosphere. Early Friday morning, it was quite nice. There were lots of people having their breakfast there. There's a cafe attached to it, but there's a little hole in the wall, hole in the door rather. When you go through, bring your breakfast back in there. They'll serve it to you there, and it is absolutely stunning when you see without the people in daylight. I mean, it is undoubtedly it is as it was intended. It must be the finest. It was designed to be the best first-class lounge of any station in the world.
You sent a picture there. Again, for those on YouTube, Bruce had did a couple of pictures, and there's like a history board, isn't it? And it says it was designed by George Hudson, obviously the railway king, in 1839, to be the best first world-class lounge in any station in the world. And the John Dobson design interior is decorated with tiles made by Bermantoffs of Leeds, and a value today at over £3.8 million. So wow, yeah. And it's grade 1 listed status. So again, it's we've mentioned these before. There are quite one or two of these very fine first class waiting lounges. It looks like a good job. So and what's it saying now? It's now locally owned and independently run by the Sanderson family, which is interesting. So not a chain or anything.
No. I mean, Sally, if you look on YouTube, the ambience is rather spot by that bald-headed man in a dress who was going on his stag do, obviously. But,
I guess that'll be the problem, because this will be a key coming on stage for stag do as well in Newcastle. Yeah,
that's past 8 in the morning.
Yeah, extraordinary fusion of modern culture and this incredible interior design, just astonishing, really. But yeah, we got out in Newcastle. I mean, we were around town a bit, went to Granger Market for some lunch. Granger Market got a fantastic collection of street food now, and of course it's undercover, really bringing the market back to life. Then we headed up to South Shields via the south side of the river. The only trouble being that we were limited south side of the river because the metros only run one line. But to give me the chance to stop off at the barber shop, where I keep going, desperately hoping to get a barber jacket that fits me at a bargain price. There's plenty of bargains, but I can't get one to fit me, sadly. So that's at Bede at Jarrow. Then we pressed on up to South Shields.
You can't afford to sell them jackets without material to fit you, bros.
No, you're right.
You're looking at the horse section, Bruce. Look in the horse section. Making a horse jacket that'll fit you.
Yeah. It's so annoying. There's zillions of small and mediums and large, but anything for me, I can't get it. We pressed on South Shields, and sadly, wouldn't quite show the marine and things, narrowboat things. So we did pop into the Alum. I quite like the Alum. It's by the Banks River. I think it's a Marston's own pub, but it's got a lovely little cozy ambience, really good prices. But of course, there are two fantastic pubs in South Shields, but we had our daughter with us. Don't think we could get them in there, really, because there's the marine, isn't there? And the what's the one called? Nick, the narrowboat, the one me and you went to.
No, is it the steamboat?
The steamboat,
steam packet steamboat.
And the other one, the marine, the one on the marine road's been voted Northeast Pub of the Year, so we'll have to visit those. So we jumped across on the ferry, went up to Tynemouth. Great buy. You can buy a day ticket actually for the transport system in Tyneside. It's bonkers. It's about £6, £15 for a family. You can use all the buses, the local trains, the metro, and even the ferry all day long. So it's great value for getting about.
That's how public transport should be, shouldn't it, Brooks? Really,
all integrated. It's absolutely right.
Telling us about, you can't use your cars at the price of fuel going up. I mean, around here, you're lucky there's a bus an hour. going to 1 or 2 destinations. So yeah,
it's amazing there. So
Yeah.
say we went to the Tyneside, and went down to the beach under the shadow of Tynemouth Castle, and actually managed to get a seat at the surf shack. That's place is heaving in summer. It's really famous, Riley Surf Shack. Seafood's amazing, but you have to book for that. But they had spaces on the veranda, so that was quite lovely. And then we headed back to town, and then we walked from. If you ever go to Tynemouth, you just go by the look. If you were facing the castle, there's a path from the right hand side. It takes you right down the banks of the Tyne, and it's about a 30-minute walk by the banks of the Tyne. It'll bring you to the Fish Quay at North Shields. I've heard about the Fish Quay and never been before actually. And apparently it's the most up and coming leisure destination in the north, and it is quite good because it's quite authentic. I mean, it's where the fishing fleet comes, and they've got the proper fish market in the front of you, and then behind it, you've just got this incredible array of bars, restaurants that cater for all tastes. There's high-end places. There's proper, as you can see from YouTube, that proper boozers pubs there. There's 2 more that are in the process of reopening. Incredibly vibrant destination and much better price than the city centre.
You get that Sam Smith's pub, Bruce?
Sadly, I was going to say the only block, the Rail Ale pub, the Wooden Dolly, that was closed. I was speaking to the chap in the junk shed there, and he was saying it only open for a few weeks, looking for someone to run it like so many. But the big find was the salt market, huge warehouse in the old salt factory / salt market. And you go up there, and it's almost now these beer halls get more and more popular, but it suits its purpose really well. I mean, they had they had 10 very different ales on, a couple of casks there, about 4 or 5 places getting street food. It's about 5 o'clock when we were there, but they apparently sell out every night. And these places seem to be coming more and more popular now, don't they? Obviously, we've got Brew York here in York, but they had some really unusual beers. I tried, for Michael's benefit, one of the sour fruit beers, which was disgusting, I have to say.
Those breweries on there you've got out there, you've got Howling Hops I've heard of. Like you say, Bruce has took a picture of the beer board there, and there's 10 keg beers on. Howling Hops out there, Black Lodge, and then there were 2 casks on out there. So again, so I've not heard about their breweries. I'm presuming the northeast base.
So definitely worth a trip up there. Let's say they made it back to town and jumped on the ferry across. Got the last ferry of the night. Actually, they're currently stopping at 7. They're going to start running again, I think, from till half 11 from the 1st of April. I went back into Newcastle Centre. We were going to head towards the quayside, but our daughter with us, and I have to say, even by 7 o'clock on a Friday night, things were heating up quite considerably around Newcastle city centre. It was quite an awful lot of gangs of lads out, and it was quite intimidating, really, if you've been totally honest about it. So we went for Italian. But yeah, great day out for, in terms of, say, with that travel ticket, you can cover a lot of ground in Newcastle in a day. We normally pop to South Shields as well. Never got time to do that. Of course, there's all these new craft ale establishments open the railway arches now. We need to go check out all those. And of course, normally our first part called the Crown Passada. But and also, of course, I know me and Nick said we've never ever been to Gateshead, where there's a few inches of the good beer guide, isn't there, really? So loads to up there.
Worth a try, yeah. No, it's interesting. We had that chat yesterday. Actually, we went. I just had a couple of beers out in the afternoon, and a couple of our the local bars that I go to, and we had that conversation actually in both bars about. Most people in there said they would never think about staying out now past 6 o'clock. Yeah. Everybody said, what they tend to do now is either they finish work early on a Saturday, just go out kind of, 3 or 4 o'clock, have 4 or 5 beers, and like you said, just then go home. And nobody would think about going out on a Saturday at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It was funny, really.
There's been a sea change in culture, hasn't there? I mean, I've been to the Wellington this afternoon with my friend. We were there at 4:30 till about 6, and it was busy then, but he was saying tonight, it's almost a shame, really, because the streets in Newcastle on Friday night did belong to sort of couples. It was just big gangs of lads, and it's not great. But we're in the daytime, of course, the heaving. So, it's been a massive change in drinking habits brought by the pandemic.
I haven't been too far, so I've mainly been in my locals here, so I just took my photos up this week. Mellards for those on YouTube on the left there. They've had a couple of North Brewing beers in. Had a Pomona Island in there yesterday. So that's been on good form. That's been, again, ticking over nicely. And then the place I've been going to a couple more times is the kind of little crafty bar, the hot water cellar. Had a few good chats with the guy in there. Again, when I go, it's fairly quiet. And again, keeping up that northeast. That last two twice I've been in there, I've been on the Full Circle beers, and they're obviously from Newcastle. I've been finished on their tipper. It's 9.8%, so that's the picture middle. It's a bit orangey for Nick, but it's quite a nice beer. Although, Bruce, remember I was in there a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling you that joined me in there, and some lads had come in, and he always has a really strong impy stout on, and that particular it was Tartarus beer from Leeds, which I'd not heard about before.
Oh, no.
And he was saying that they're a fairly small, newish beer in brewery, in Leeds, and they specialise in kind of quite strong beers. And they had something called Abaddon, which was 17%. It was called a Monster Stout, which had 15 different malts in it. It was £13 a pint, and it was something like I think £5.80 for a third. And he reckoned it would last. It would be gone in a week. But I must admit, I didn't dare go for a 17% stout in the middle of the afternoon. A couple of lads who were on a bit of a tour, they both had a third each, and it was like. Yeah, it was interesting, really.
It requires a certain warmth to that strength. If it gets a warmth, doesn't it?
I tell you, yeah. But again, prices are slightly, kind of, I guess, slightly going on. I know somebody's tweeting today about a couple of pubs have put their beers up by 20p. I think that's kind of a bit like the petrol is what we're heading for, isn't it, really? And Nick, I've just put this picture.
Basic minimum wage is going up 1st of April.
Yeah, true.
And that's quite a jump this year. So. Yeah. And then it's not just the wage; it's the contribution that employees have to make towards pensions and all that sort of stuff, national insurance. So, it's the equivalent of somebody over the age of 22, 23 now. You're paying them 11, 12 quid an hour.
So, just for those on YouTube again on the pictures, there's a picture of very, very wet Nick there. This was our little soiree into Whitby. We probably have to catch up on actually because we did manage to get into a couple of newish pubs while we were in Whitby and different pubs, so we perhaps need to do that one, Nick.
Looks like I'm wearing a pair of them women's leggings that are like bin liners, but
very wet.
They're my outdoor trousers, my waterproof trousers, Bruce. That were very, 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 very wet.
Yeah, we were trying to kind of dodge Storm Eunice, and we thought we'd done all right. Actually, we got to the first pub, pretty dry, and had a nice pint. And just we finished that pint off, started to tap on the window with the rain. So we thought, well, I'll tell you what, we're about 3.5 miles from Whitby at that point. So we said, well, we'll head back in and we'll head to the brewery. So by the time we got to the brewery about an hour later, we were absolutely proverbial, wet through. So
it was a bit drizzly.
But then within what, half an hour, Nick, it was bright blue sky. When in fact we had all our kits off, we managed to get a lovely table you can see there on YouTube in front of the big glass doors. And we got most of it dried off, but I'm still thinking that's when I got my lurgy here. So, Nick, you mentioned going up to the Royal Oak in Malton, and apparently Steve's putting his price up as well, is he?
Yeah, 360 now, which is still good. So he's put his up by 20p, but once again, had a quick walk out yesterday afternoon. Started with the Yorkshire Blackout, which is Cropton, or we were talking about this, either call them Cropton Brewery, C84 Co, or the Great Yorkshire Brewery. But in fact, the new inn at Cropton is up for sale. Wow. But it's a bit ambiguous when you read the reading whether the actual brewery is part of the deal or not. And I can't remember how much it's for, £1.5 million, I think. So you would hope you're going to get the brewery in that. But as I say, when you read the description of the premises, I don't know, it mentions a brewery, but it doesn't say you're buying the brewery. And I'm just wondering whether they have moved the brewery onto an industrial estate or whether they're going to carry on brewing concentrate on that now rather than running the pub. Anyway, nice pint to start with. That's a 5%. That's a vanilla stout. And then I just went on the White Dragon. I say I never used to really like Rudgate beers, but it seems that they're still going, fairly sensible, not messing about with flavours. So I had a pint of that. And then I walked back down into Malton, just across Keys. They had Westgate Brewery, which is Wakefield, classic blonde. And it was actually nice for a blonde because it wasn't citrusy. And the good thing in there was I got in there about 5, 6 o'clock, and the whole of the main bar area was full of people eating. It seems they've got a proper chef in there now because he actually had a walk out. I didn't eat, of course, but he had a quick walk round, making sure that food was all right, which is always a good sign when a bloke, has got the balls to come out of his kitchen and actually ask people face to face. And as I say, it was pleasantly full. I mean, I just got the last little table. So it was nice to see them ticking over nicely. And they had bulk maker, I say they had Westgate Brewery. They always have Abbeydale Resolution on in there as well. Bit more expensive, £3.95. Other news from Malton is that the Royal Oak has got new tenants, landlord, landlady. So that should be opening. That's the Royal Oak in the marketplace itself, which is a classic cracking location. That's at the bottom of the marketplace. I don't know if you guys are aware of Salt Brewery, which is obviously one of Osset's businesses. Seems that they're buying out all the stew and oysters now and converting to theirs. So there's still the rumour that the stew and oyster in Malton is going to become a Salt outlet, which will obviously improve on the beer offering in there as well. So that could be a positive move.
They're becoming a very big brand now, aren't they?
Yeah. Lady who was going to go into the Spotted Cow, I was told, read the small print and suddenly discovered that one of the clauses on the release was that the estate could take the pub back off her within 6 months notice. Which, once again, if you're a landlord, landlady, you're investing into a building, although it has been completely refurbished, to only have 6 months notice is a bit naughty, really. So it sounds like she's not going in there now. And I also believe that the new Malton business is up for sale. Need to look into that a bit more. Gemma and Ant, I think I know where they're going to be moving to. I think they're staying in town. But that's interesting as well. I was told that business is up for sale for £97,500 for the business, because obviously the building is owned by Fitzwilliam Estate. But if they move into another premises in town and then somebody else comes and takes a new Malton on, that could theoretically give us another outlet for real ale, because I say Gemma's always been very good with her real ale offerings. So that's about my news from Malton.
Oh, I've got some other news, Malton, and I'll keep it back then. Some more news about pubs in Malton that I picked up this week as well. So moving to some beer news, that takes on my out, which will be here next slide anyway. So first of all, some sad news actually. I know me and Bruce shared this earlier on, and we mentioned this pub a couple of times. And one of our very early venues, that's certainly our first beer trips, and that's the Cricketer's Arms in Keighley, which was one of the Timothy. Well, it wasn't a Timothy Taylor's pub, was it? It was it says Worth Brews up there on their sign. But obviously where we were regulars there when we went to Keighley. But unfortunately, it's no longer a viable business.
Very sad.
Closing, I think this week. I think it closed, unfortunately. So
but
it wasn't a very big spot, was it?
No, it was stuck down a side road, wasn't it? You never passed it by, would you?
Yeah.
You never walked past it, so you have to know where it was.
It's a shame. So yeah, the other news is I picked up this week that the Gate Inn, which is one of, again, quite an old pub in Malton, but one that
infamous pub
shut for quite a while. Apparently, it's going to be renamed the Filly and Flagon. And I did pick up. Did I pick up who's? It was a pub. I think it's Punch Taverns. Obviously, still own it. So that's the planning permission that had gone in to rename it, and as I put a new pub sign out. The Filly.
Not much going to change there though. It's Punch Taverns. That was the problem before when they had it before. They couldn't find anybody to run it. So the issue was the people they put in there.
So that was a bit of news there, and I think we perhaps need to do an update on Malton, because we haven't actually done a podcast about Malton, despite the podcast being named after the town. So perhaps that's maybe to keep an eye on that, and then maybe I'll look at these new places. And I know, Bruce, you shared this with me, which is quite again contemporary, because we talked about a lot. The Londonist.com, and they do quite a few of these, but they did the 11 best Sam Smith's pubs in London this week. That was kind of tweeted out. Read that, wasn't it? So I put them all together. So we've mentioned quite a few of these, but again, there's some interesting ones that I haven't been to. So they're I don't know whether they numbered them in. I don't know what the number them in really, but their number one was the Prentice Police Holborn. So obviously Nick was there not so long back. Number two was the Champion in Fitzrovia, which again has got some fantastic windows in there.
Absolutely.
I was going to go to that one, but I went to the Fitzroy Tavern instead.
Yeah, I'm sure we mentioned
because it's a smaller one-room pub, is that one? But yeah, they say the stained glass windows, sporting heroes and things like that in the windows. And apparently
I'm looking at the windows here have W.G. Grace, which you can see again if you're on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
Florence Nightingale, and Edward Whymper, the first person to climb the Matterhorn. So very nice. The next one, again, I've not heard of, is the Captain Kidd in Wapping.
Yeah,
which apparently is kind of a bit like right by the river.
On the river, yeah.
It'll transport you back to the time of pirates and smugglers, it says. So that's that one. Number 4 is the City of York in Chancery Lane.
That looks impressive.
I have been in that one.
Been to that one, yeah.
I think me and you have been in that one.
I think that was first Sam Smith that we ever went in.
They've got number 5 is the old Swiss Cottage, which is in Swiss Cottage, which again looks like a Swiss Cottage, surprisingly.
On a traffic island.
Yeah. And nearby Sainsbury's. What it says in the write-up, it said, nothing particularly outstanding about Swiss Cottage. Indeed, if you believe some of the food reviews on TripAdvisor, you'd be better off sourcing lunch from nearby Sainsbury's. So there we go. And number 6 was the George and Vulture in Bank, which again looks quite an interesting pub. Heated by decorative stoves, pristine white tablecloths with waiters, straight out of a Dickens novel. And apparently it features in the Pickwick Papers as possibly the melancholy tavern that Scrooge eats in before he reads The Haunting of the Lighthouse. So interesting. And then the next ones were, let me go down the slide, the Crown and Sugarloaf in Fleet Street, which I think I've been past. The Old Cheddar Cheese in Flint Street, we've mentioned that. I think, Bruce, that was one of your top London pubs. The Angel in Bermondsey, which is right on the river. The Yorkshire Grey in Fitzrovia, I have been in the Yorkshire Grey. And then the last one they've got here is the Town Wharf in Isleworth, which is right on the river as well. So maybe
I think that one's almost on its own. I think that if that's on the South Bank, basically there's nothing else around it really. It's a wonder that one survives. I think you can get off the ferry, off the Clipper, but you have to walk to it. I fancied doing it, but then I looked it on Google Earth. I thought it's a bit of a no man's land really. If you don't know the area, you can't fit in with the locals. So yeah, never quite got to that one.
So it sits directly on the Heathrow flight path, apparently. So you can sit on the deck and watch the planes come in. So very interesting. So yeah, maybe some for a future visit there as well. I'm sorry if you Google that. So Amble. So Amble is a very quaint little fishing town up in Northumberland. It's kind of, I guess, halfway between Newcastle and Berwick, I guess, Nick, I would imagine, isn't it? It's not far from Alnwick, Warkworth, that kind of middle there. Very, very nice. It featured on one of those winter walks. That was kind of all the rage, wasn't it? And kind of
Nick Grimshaw did it, didn't he?
With Nick Grimshaw, in fact, I think the week after we've been there, it was all over the bloody telly. The hairy bikers were there as well. So it features quite well, really. So it's very, very, very picturesque. It's a small town. It's had quite a lot of development down by the docks, so lots of new buildings and some quite little bars and kind of pods. That was very nice. But then again, some kind of where Radcliffe's bar, wasn't it? That was bigger than pods, wasn't it? All very nice, refurbished. Still a working harbour. So again, a lot of seafood and surprisingly, actually, quite a few pubs. So I think what pub, obviously the camera guide, it suggests that there are 14 pubs. It lists 14 pubs in Amble. Unfortunately, many of them have the horrible red cask with the lime to it, which means there's no cask beer there. Actually, we found a few other pubs that were not listed. So I think of the 14 that are on the screen there, I think we managed to get around 6 of them. A couple of them, I think, was it that harbour that was shut permanently, wasn't it? A couple of them had obviously not reopened from COVID, etc., because we were still just kind of coming out with that. So quite an interesting array of pubs as well. There are some fairly old-fashioned looking pubs and some very newer ones, including one that's in the tourism what was the Tourist Information Centre, which was quite an interesting experience, wasn't it? Especially when the local resident fell backwards off the stool partway through drinking, who had a lot of beer that night when we visited. So there we go. But the find and probably kept us both sane, I think, because we were there with family, wasn't it? I'd done a little bit of kind of pre-planning, and I picked up there was a little brewery tap deep in the industrial estate off the Alnwick bypass, the Amble bypass. It didn't particularly look very kind of enticing, did it, Nick? And I think when I must admit, we got dropped off on a roundabout on a dual carriageway. And we literally, I think, did we go for a drink in the Amble Inn first? Ken, we did or not? I think we did, didn't we? Because the brewery didn't open until
one of the Inn collection,
So there's like a big chain pub on the, typical kind of, kiddies playground and whack out the food. And I think we ended up drinking Sharps Atlantic in there, didn't we?
Unfortunately, all they had on was Doom Bar, so we went on the Sharps Atlantic IPA, which is electric, and it was about £5.95.
Because the brewery is in the breweries in the little industrial estate next door. We didn't open until 4. So again, for those on YouTube, this is the picture. This is the first picture we took As you can see, it was kind of about, I don't know, 3 o'clock on New Year's Eve, or well, not on New Year's time. So it was getting quite dark. And then this little glow of light. And actually, when we got there, it was a bloody fantastic little place, wasn't it? Absolutely healing.
Yeah.
I think we had to queue a couple of times. We were quite lucky. We just kind of timed it right. But we thought, well, we'll go at 4 and we'll be straight in there. But even at 4, it was people were queuing, weren't they, around the block?
Yeah.
The table. So it's a typical industrial unit. The brewery is on the right as you go in, the brewing bit. The bar's towards the right with a little cubicle toilet behind it. There's limited seating really inside. There's probably about 4 or 5 tables inside.
Inside,
They managed, again, for those on YouTube, they managed to kind of have quite a nice courtyard outside, which now they're completely covered with terracing and plastic PVC sheets. So it's quite a nice sitting out area. So I think actually the first 2 times we sat outside, and we did manage to gradually work our way in, didn't we?
Even though it was December.
Yeah. There's a street vendor. There's always a chaining street vendor right outside, which works really well. And it was unbelievable for, like you say, the middle of January in a fairly, I wouldn't say remote place, but it's a bit out of the way, Amble. It's certainly off the main drag. It's quite away from Newcastle or any big, big population areas.
Well, it's typical hinterland. As the town's expanded, they built a massive, great big, was it Sainsbury's and Morrison's there? And then because of that, that's become like their industrial area. There's a park for, it's a travel company, coaches, and then you've got a line of units, industrial units, and the brewery's taking the end one.
Yeah, and obviously was well known. So this is the Brewers Beer Company, who have been there not that long. Very much a family-run brewery. So that we were asking about who brewed the beer, and the barmaid told, well, my husband brews that beer. Fairly small concern, wasn't it? In fact, we thought it was all keg, but actually we managed to get inside, and we saw there were casks, so we got on the casks as well, and we had a good range of beers, didn't we? Really, there it was. So I picture the beer board there. So, and again, quite nice in that they do their own beers, so they're the Brewis beers for those that are looking on the YouTube. But then also they did quite a few local and not so local beers. So when we were in there, they had Wiper and True, that's from the Northeast Brewery, Tempest, Cowfold, and obviously Curdle, which is from London. But a fantastic range there again, sours, imperial stouts. That we tended to stick on the IPAs, didn't we? House IPA and then they did a house bitter on the cask. So yeah, all in all, it wasn't bad. Actually, their prices were okay. $3.60 for a pint of IPA, 3.8%, $3.90 for a 5% house pale. So very reasonable. And we had a few good sessions there. We had a couple afternoon sessions, couple of night sessions.
I'll have to admit it was a saviour, because I'm afraid I was a little bit disappointed in Amble. I looked upon it as being a place like Whitby, with a lot of little traditional fishermen's pubs and stuff like that. But it seemed to be either end of the spectrum. You either had 4 or 5 traditional pubs that weren't very welcoming, as you say, all they had one was electric beer, or the places where you could find real ale, they were either cafe bars or they were, a converted, whilst it had been the TIC, you would have thought it maybe been a converted toilet. It really was just like a black-walled garage.
Pretty dank on it,
It had no character going for it whatsoever. Good range of beer, but I think because of the fixtures and fittings, it certainly wasn't busy the couple of times that we went in there. Whereas compared to the brewery, and I said to you, Mike, I said, if you can serve real ale and get a good atmosphere going, people will come up. And it was obvious that there were local people going to the brewery, there were people on holiday, but that spot was rammed. And yet any other pub in town, you took a peek through the doors and looked through the windows and they were completely deserted. So, it just showed with the right attitude and doing it right, you could probably try and
identified a niche there, haven't they? Yeah.
Absolutely, And so again, well worth looking out for. So it's the Brewis Beer Company, well worth looking out for. I don't know if you can tell Bruce on that picture, which was Nick's pint, which was my pint.
I can definitely guess, yeah.
Well, you can say I made him have one of those very, very soupy thirds as well, which is great, because we did that. We kind of had a pint in it, didn't we? Then we always tried something else as well. And
like Mango Mongo or something. I don't know what it was.
So the Cock and Bull. So the Cock and Bull is actually listed as number 1 in the camera guide for Amble. And this is in the previous TIC, the Tourism Information Centre, which is kind of off the main kind of dragon Amble, on kind of a little bit about what's tried to be a little bit of a square, but I'm afraid it was full of chip papers and cans of cider, wasn't it? We were there. And like Nick said, as you can see here, it's a bit of a weird place, really. It's very dark, a bit dank. The tables literally looked like they'd been on the
Scaffolding
beach.
boards.
Yeah, scaffolding boards and bits of wood off the beach. We went in a couple of times. And I say that we went in what we probably on a Friday, Saturday night first, went in about 9 o'clock, and there was a couple on one side table and a very, very inebriated local at the bar who was entertaining us all with his music choice, and at one point simply just completely fell off his high stool, smacked on the bar. So, anyway, got up, shook himself down, asked for another drink, and then I think he was drinking whiskey though. So yeah, so the Cock and Bull is it did serve 3 or 4 different beers on, quite a range of beer really, keg and cask, and the beer was all right. I think we had in there. We had some different mix. So yeah, but the atmosphere was a bit weird really, wasn't it? It was a bit of a funny place really. So the other place that we kind of rescued us was again, it looks quite a nondescript place. It wasn't in the camera guide, but we looked it up, and this was Radcliffe's. So Radcliffe's is a kind of German bar, but with a slight twist in that a lot of the beers that it sold, although they had German and Belgian kind of names and things, were actually a lot of them were brewed quite local. So it was quite strange, really. And this is in one of the new units right by the quayside, in a quite a nice thing. And so there's a picture of Nick just wandering in there. And it was great that they did tasters. They actually did quadruple tasters, which was quite nice, wasn't it? Because they could have 4 beers then. And it wasn't too badly priced.
Well, I think they had. Did they have 4 amp pumps on the bar, and then
they had 4 pumps on the bar?
The other way around,
yeah. So you could try all 4, which was great. This is Mark. Apparently, it was only recent. I think he unfortunately took it over just at the start of COVID. But I think we had a chat with him on the second time we were in there. And I say, although it's very much German focused, and people were drinking German beers. And
continental, I think. Continental.
You always get the nice, the glasses, didn't you? You get the proper glasses for everything.
Yeah.
But actually, quite a few of the beers were actually brewed by local breweries that brewed a Belgian beer, brewed a German beer, as well as some kind of continental ones as well. So all in all, it wasn't too bad, really. It was again a nice. Obviously the weather wasn't great. It's got a nice little bit of a sitting out area. They did coffee and breakfast in the day, so it was quite busy all day long. It didn't stay open that late, didn't it? Because we got kicked out a couple of times at 9 o'clock, wasn't it? They were kind of last orders, wasn't it?
I mean, it's the sort of place you wouldn't go for a session really because of the strength of the beers, and once again, it was a bit more pricier than the brewery.
Yeah, the prices they're at. They've got a Dunkel. We like that Dunkel. The Dunkel was $5.45 for a pint, and that was 5.5%. They had the Menabrea Lager, that's Italian, isn't it, at $4.95, and then the Belgian beer was at 6%, which is that Bruges de Zol blonde. But I think that's the one that was brewed by Rig and Furrow, wasn't it? I'm going to come on to that in a minute, actually, because that was quite a quiet thing. Actually, in that area of Northumberland, as always, there is a remarkable number of small up-and-coming breweries. So again, I came across something actually after we came home, and there's First and Last Brew in Elsdon. There's a Rig and Furrow. They're the ones that were making Belgian type farmhouse beers for that bar there. Brewis Beer, we've mentioned Amble. There's also something called Credence Brewing in Amble. There's the Grounding Angels Brew in Hexham. There's a Cheviot Brewery in Ford Etal. Twice Brewed It in Aiden's Wall. Muckle Brewing at Haltwhistle. Bear Claw at Berwick. Alnwick and Allendale up the road at Allendale. So, and again, I've got to say, in most of those bars we've just talked about, they did have some of these local beers in as well. And the one we were drinking it quite a lot, Nick, was that Run Hot Run, wasn't it, from Rig and Furrow, which is kind of literally, it's a bit like the Bradfield, Bradfield beers.
Yeah, we had that in Warkworth, didn't we? In the hotel just in the shadow of the castle.
Remember, they were also brewing one of those Belgian beers in Radcliffe as well, he told us. So, which is kind of, interesting, really. So that was worth a look in, was the German bar. The other one we went to that's a bit posher was the old Boathouse. This is listed by camera. This is mainly a seafood kind of restaurant. And as you see there, they do a very, very nice fish platter that we went there on New Year's Eve. That was very nice. And thankfully, they had quite some good beer on them. They only had one hand pump on, but they had Tyneside Blonde, which is from the Hadrian Border Brewery, and we're a few of those, Nick. And this is in one of those shacks right on the harbour side there, as you can see. And just across the way from that was the Fish Shack. And this also again this actually had quite a range of beers on the fish shack. A little bit snooty that we couldn't get a table, and they had some sheds, so we ended up sitting there where the hairy bacon's sitting. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, and I think me and Nick were supping at Allendale Pennine Pale in there. But then about 4 or 5 beers on, didn't we, Nick, in there? Again, we just got a bit put off by the kind of welcome that we got. Or
we had to queue at the door. That's what we wanted. Well, we want a drink. Oh, where you sitting? Well, you've got a shed out there that's empty. Oh no, that's reserved. So where can we sit then? Oh, we can sit outside the picnic benches. And once again, this was about 6:30, 7 o'clock on a December evening. Could have been New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve,
they might have had the shed reserved, but all they had to say was like, "Well, you can have it for half an hour, lads." And we would have been saying, "That's fine." But there we are.
So anyway, it's definitely worth. I love it there in the summer because again, great fish, obviously seafood if you fancy that. So, but again, we didn't eat in the summer. We went for a pint. And in the end, they were all right with it. I think we might have had another one in there as well. The other 2 pubs we visited while we were there. We've mentioned the Amble Inn, which has got a travel. Well, it's not a travel; it's their own kind of chain, isn't it?
It's one of the inn collection that are growing massively at the moment. Massive expansion. They're being funded by a finance group called Alchemy, and also it's that Oak Green Bank. So yeah. Certainly in the north of England, Cumbria, over to Lake District, and even around here, North Yorkshire, they're buying up every property. They're the ones who bought up Dean Courtbrooks in York. So they are expanding massively. So this is a new build because we actually went to the Coast Guard, what was it called, in Blythe. And once again, that's an impressive new build pub, or it's basically new build. But yeah, so it's an edge of town. It is,
it's on the ring road. It's kind of,
you'd say, if you didn't look at who was owning it, you say it was a brewer's fair or something like that, but it serves purpose. Big eating area, nice big outside area. I would think during lockdown they did all right because they've got a huge, great outdoor area. But unfortunately, it was the normal culprits on the bar from the Doom Bar stable. Green King. Whilst I think the Inn Collection are independent, they tend to stick to that.
And I think we were in there kind of betwixtmas, weren't they? So I guess they'd had beers at Christmas and maybe it wasn't in. And then the other place we called in was a Snowy Owl, which is one of the vintage inns, which is in Cramlington, which is just on the road, about half an hour from Amble. And obviously vintage inns normally have a fairly good range of beers. And I think the Black Sheep was it. I think we drank it there, Nick, and there was a local one as well, wasn't there? Which is okay, obviously with the vouchers and your pounds off and everything.
No, but they've reduced offer now. They do 10% off a pint. I think they're taking it out to 10 pence now, which isn't that generous. Because I mean, you're looking at at least a £4 in a vintage now for a pint real ale. So it's something, but it's not compared to £4 with 10% off. Brought it down to £3.60. Now, as I say, 10 pence off £4, it's £3.90. So it's still. It's better now, I suppose, but
it's strange because I mean, I know both from around here. You do get a few regulars who go drinking. I think it's probably quite useful money, so I bet that's knocked them a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they tend to be more aimed at eating, don't they? Vintage inns, they tend to be more kind of food based, don't they? So, whilst they always offer a couple of good beers, I think they're obviously making their money on the on getting you eating. So, I think we actually ended up, Nick, in the Radcliffe's German bar, and I finished. I think we're having some. Might be Dunkels we're drinking then, but I ended up on the Quack, mainly because they're that fantastic glass that you have to kind of hold in the wooden stand. So that was quite strong.
Yeah, it was. I think that was my round, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was a good show. And then we managed to get into one beer just elsewhere. So nearby Warkworth, which has got a very prominent castle, which you can see from Amble, it kind of linked the kind of two villages that are almost joined together. Quite a nice walk at the along the river there that I know you did. I think when we'd gone there.
Yeah.
And a bit of a mix here, because in the camera guide, this is called the Sun Inn, but actually it's the, well, no, I presume they are the same business, aren't they? It's the Sun Hotel on one side and the Castle Brew House on the other side. And the actual bar that you drink in is the Castle Brew House. And so that's a picture that we've got there with the dogs outside. Again, they've got a nice sitting area that's directly opposite Warkworth Castle. So if it's a nice afternoon where you've got big dogs, you can sit outside and look at the castle. We actually managed to get inside. And again, there's a picture of the bar there that, as Nick mentioned, we were drinking that hop there, which was very nice. Very busy bar, wasn't it? If you remember right, it was
a lot of people eating again, a lot of families. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can see there for those on YouTube, the middle picture, Castle Brew House. It says on one side, and this is the Sun Hotel on the other. And I look, and the camera guide still calls it the Sun Hotel for some reason.
But they don't brew beer there, do they?
They don't. No. I think it's just
a bit weird.
A link to the castle. Really, that's the Castle Brew House, and there's a couple of other pubs in Warkworth, but that's the one we tend to use, and that was okay. And then
it's weird in Warkworth. Warkworth reminds me of a village in the Cotswolds. You've got a high street with a raised pavement down either side, and it declines from the castle. So if you stand where the castle is and look down, you've got this long high street. The colour of the stone as well reminds me of a place in Gloucestershire. It's always a bit weird when you drive down there.
Then Nick, you managed a solo hike. You went for a walk, and you the one pub that we hadn't been to was the Wellwood Arms in Amble. Yeah,
well, that's another wet day. I decided to go for a bit of a twitch down the estuary. So the road that connects Amble to Warkworth, it runs alongside the estuary, and there was, being that time of year, a lot of migratory birds and stuff in there. So I had to walk up there, got to the far end. It started raining, came back, and this is the last pub as you go out of Amble on that road. So it's always looked okay. So popped in there, said to the landlord, have you got a place where you don't mind me dripping? He said, oh, you're all right. I said, no. I said, I'm really wet. So I actually just stood the bar. I think they had 2 or 3 real ales on there. Once again, quite a few people eating, quite a few older locals in there. So good atmosphere, good pub inside. And yeah, it's a shame we only found it in the last day, because I think that could have been one of our regular haunts, Mike. Even though once again, it was a little bit of a further walk out for us from where the accommodation was. But definitely go back in there, if we go to Amble again.
Very good. So I think that rounds up our little, just a quick update on kind of our New Year ramble around Amble, as I called it. So again, well, it's a lovely little place, fantastic beaches up there, very quiet. If you're into your history, you've got some lovely castles. If you're into Harry Potter, quite a lot of the scenes of Hogwarts are filmed at Alnwick. Obviously, you're not too far from your castle, and obviously you've got Berwick as well and the Scottish borders. So we had a good few days up there. Definitely somewhere you go back to as well. So that's another episode in the bag. As I said, we kind of haven't really got a massive plan at the moment. So the last episode I kind of did with Todd and just kind of read through our little trip that we'd had in York and Tadcaster. We probably got to do one. We could do one about Whitby, because I know Nick and I have done that. As I mentioned, Beer Town, which is Malton's kind of brewing kind of get-together festival, that is taking place on Thursday the 21st, Friday 22nd, and Saturday 23rd of April this year. So I think that's kind of Easter. I think it's either weekend after Easter, isn't it?
That's the end weekend when school's going back, I think.
Yeah. So I probably will plan to get up to Malton. So I don't know whether we're going to plan maybe to have a do there. See how we feel about that. As I mentioned, the other one that is another possibility is the Thornbridge have got there for the first time in 2 years. They're putting on their festival, which they hold on the showground and the big agricultural market in Bakewell. So that's in the summer. So there's a possibility there that we could do that one. We've talked about maybe planning a trip to maybe Sheffield, we've mentioned.
Yeah.
Bruce has talked about, again, maybe another trip to Newcastle. I know you guys are still hanging out for your Northern train tickets.
Yeah, I'm just checking out, actually, as you speak.
Yeah, right.
No, signed it yet, actually.
Yeah. It's maybe because government are running it now, isn't it?
I know.
But as we say, we could all be putting on flat jackets and learning how to fire an automatic weapon in a couple of weeks' time. So who knows? So I think maybe next time then we might just have a get together, maybe have a beer and just have a chat about thoughts and ideas about kind of as spring. I mean, it was quite light actually tonight. It was,
yeah.
6 o'clock, wasn't it? It was the football was on as well. So that probably going to be our next episode, and obviously catch up on any more updates to beery news and any travels that we have. So, gents, anything else you want to add for this episode?
No, I don't think so. Let's hope we're all here in a couple of weeks' time and still talking about this.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, I'll play the funky music and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks' time.
Bye.
See you then.